The walk that I'm going to describe is right at the southern end, next to Cirencester, and it follows a route which goes across 2 Ordnance Survey maps. So if you're going to follow this route, I recommend you do take each of these maps, and the dividing line shown there by that red line. It's about 5.5 miles, I guess. Interested in varied scenery, takes you into Cirencester Park, but there is a shorter route if it's for wet weather, which knocks it down to about 4 miles, 4.5 miles. And there's parking available near the start point, which is the Gloucester Street Bridge. And I'll hopefully be able to show you that in a moment. But first, a little bit about the area. And as I understand it, the original village of Stratton was centred on the ancient Parish Church, which runs alongside the Roman road, now known as Gloucester Road, but that would have been Ermine Street, nearly 2,000 years ago. And whilst the eastern side of the Ermine Street is quite built up with housing, to the west, the parish consists of extensive open fields and woodland, ideal for country walking, but who knows, in 50 or 100 years from now, some of that might be built up as well, the way things are going. And just to show that the walk this morning is right at the end of what I've come to call the Churn Valley Way, which ends at the sort of garage. I suppose that's the easiest landmark. The overall route goes through the old village of Stratton, the original village, to the parish church, then out across the fields towards Daglingworth, then back along a metalled road past the polo fields, and then into Cirencester Park, down a feature known as the Broad Ride, and then back past the swimming pool to the start point. So here's the garage I mentioned earlier, and the actual start point is the Gloucester Street Bridge, which you can see there on the map. And alongside it, there's another picture of some people having a picnic, enjoying paddling in the river. And so the route heads up into sort of parallel to the Gloucester Road, and we're just going to start going along it now. And you probably recognise that some of these pictures are taken from Google Earth, so I've got to give credit to that, because if obviously I could have stood in the middle of the road and tried to take this picture, but I might not be here now to give you the talk. Further up the road, there's a very well-known turning. The 435 goes off towards Cheltenham, and at that point, I don't know if you can see a bit of daylight breaking in from the left-hand side of the picture, and there's a gap in the trees which takes you through into a field. This is the stile, and immediately there's a little stream going off towards Cirencester. But if you turn in the other direction, then that's looking back to where Rob and Margaret have come through that gap in the hedge that I was telling you about. But in the other direction, you go across a massive field, and after about 5 minutes, you start to enter a housing estate through this tiny little gap. So interesting feature. And then there's a road there called Donside in Lower Stratton, which in the afternoon sunshine was very attractive. You can see the housing there. Reminds me a bit of being at the seaside, although there's no seashore for miles away, but just got that sort of a nice atmosphere. And at the end of that short road, come to some allotments, and there's a sort of dog leg there. You turn right and then immediately left past the allotments, and then looking back, you can see they're quite well cared for. And then continuing along the side of this wall, past the allotments, you then enter a large field through this little gate, and there's the Stratton House Hotel and some of those other places that we are familiar to us over on the main road, on the Gloucester Road, previously Ermine Street. The path there starts to go past some huge trees along the side of the fence there. Just an odd glimpse through into mansions hidden away in the on the west side of the road. And then you come to the old school, which looks like it's a Victorian structure. Some extensions at the front and the back, but I don't know much about the history at all of this school building. But it did occur to me that it might make a church hall if we wanted to find the money for something like that, because it's only about 200 yards from the church building, which is across these fields here. And you can see we were there about 3 weeks ago, just as the blossom was starting to fade a little bit, but it is absolutely glorious just in front of the church there, if you're there at the right time of year. So just a few words about the Parish Church of St. Peter in Stratton. And it is a Norman or possibly even a Saxon foundation, but only the south wall, which we're looking at now, has survived from the Norman period. And there's our leader, the Reverend David Minns, who's the rector of the Churn Valley Benefice, and I took this picture of him soon after he arrived, and certainly got a glorious start to his ministry. Entering the porch is quite a welcoming atmosphere, and over the door lintel is the Norman Timperium depicting the Tree of Life. You can't see it very well there, but there is some ancient carving there that is well worth admiring. And then I read somewhere that the original oak-studded door was once covered with leather, and we brought it into the 21st century quite recently by fitting an automatic door locking mechanism on a time switch, the same as we have at Cowley Parish Church. And we're grateful for the expertise of some of the local PCC members who've persevered with that to get it working perfectly now. Inside the parish church, this is the nave leading up to the sanctuary, of course. It has been over, well, it's 1849, 1850 was when it was last had a major restoration. But as the Reverend David pointed out, over on the left in the side chapel, there is potential for further development, perhaps putting in a mezzanine floor. But so it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. Do we need to grow the congregation before we put the extensions in, or should it happen the other way around? Anyway, that's beyond my pay grade. There are some beautiful stained glass windows in Stratton Parish Church. This one on the left, inspired by Revelation 3:20, with Christ standing at the door, and symbolic that the handle, the key for entry, is on the inside, so it's up to the individual whether they want to have Christ in their life or not. And then over on the right side, this is a very nice stained glass window depicting St. Peter holding the keys into the kingdom. And on the bottom there's the cockerel, which crowed, you may remember, 3 times in the gospel story. Here's some congregation members. I won't dwell on this because you can come back and have a look at it in greater detail later on, but we're very fortunate to have several members of the congregation who've been involved with the church and committing their time for several decades. The plough, you won't necessarily expect a pub to be an important part of the life of the church, but the plough is important, and there are social gatherings there at least twice a week, and the landlord, landlady are very kind to support the church in the way that they do. The church has in the past had quite a strong presence of young people, and the Reverend Jan Moore and others have put a lot into the young people's ministry, particularly thinking of the Messy Church, which was around and going very well about 4 or 5 years ago. Here's some of the pictures which the kids have produced. And these little figures of the Holy Family come out every Advent, and they overnight in each of the houses, well, not all of the houses, but several of the houses in the run-up to Christmas. In the summertime, the Reverend David has brought to us this summer kind of club for children and young people, and that's getting well established now. More recently, the church has had some recognition of the environmental work that's been going on over several years. Some of the key people who've worked on that over the years. If we go out to the back of the church and down the road towards Daglingworth, have to cross over carefully to the other side of the road, down the footpath, and then opposite the cemetery on the right-hand side of the road, cross over again, and then there's a little footpath that goes down through a shady area to the bottom of the hill. And there's Margaret and Rob walking down towards me. And the stream is met there at the bottom of the hill. So that's looking back towards Cirencester. And if you spin round in the direction, there's this gate. And over on the left, you can see gates of a private house. But going through the footpath, then you get a glimpse across to the big gates and quite an interesting looking character on the wall there. Looking back a bit further beyond those gates, you can see some of the houses and the original settlement of Stratton. And further, I'm sort of walking backwards here, but I want to just draw your attention to this little post on the left. It's not very obvious, but that post is an important marker for a route which then goes, a footpath which goes off to the right, following the stream in the general direction of Daglingworth. So that's where we're going to go initially. And just to remind you, we've come up from Cirencester to the Stratton Parish Church, and now we're heading off towards that red line, which you can see marking the divide between one map and the other map. There's a little ford which goes across the stream, and that stream does flood up in the winter months. And the first time I walked this, there was a flood which was quite extensive, really, almost welly boot depth, and it went on for several hundred yards. So in a moment, I'm going to just describe an alternative route for other times of year. Clearly, I was shocked to find a deer that had been brought down, possibly by another animal from the look of the back end of it. And then, this may be total coincidence, but 20 minutes later, near the polo fields beyond Daglingworth, I caught a glimpse of a big dog, which turned out to be a German Shepherd on the loose. Anyway, on a more pleasant note, walking across the field beyond at that point, the footpath rises up to the edge of Daglingworth, and I read somewhere that there was evidence of a Roman villa just on that side of the hill there. This is actually a picture taken from Google Earth on the road into Daglingworth, but it just gives a better sense of perspective. A little bit further on, climbing over a stile, and then there's a very narrow corridor between two fences which take you past the farm buildings to the road in Daglingworth. And I was very struck by the window here with these three little slits, which looks like quite an ancient window to me. But then the route turns sharp left, so that's where we've come from, where the red dotted line is, and then it turns off to one side, as you can see, towards Cirencester Park. And along the way, you pass by the Greenhill Equestrian Manor Farm stables. It's a very good road, and there's a barrier across it, so you can't drive, but I guess you could obviously take bikes and horses along here. And it climbs very gradually this little hill, and then opens into the most enormous field, which some of you will know far better than I do, but I can imagine it would make another airport for some, if ever flights get going again after the COVID pandemic. But it's an absolutely massive field. Oh, I should just say there's an important landmark here in that the polo score sheet is available. But the other alternative route, if it's very damp, is to take a shortcut, which you can see on the map there, and that takes about a mile and a quarter off the overall route, and it gets you to the same place. So if you go back to where the house was and the stile, there's the marker that took us off to the right to Daglingworth. But if you then walk up the side of the wall, you could have views across to the manor house, which you can see. And this looks like the obvious route, but it doesn't. I'm not sure whether this is an official footpath or not. It may just be a farm track where permission is granted for people to use it. But I think it's quite a popular route. And there's a view looking back towards Stratton. Again, they're keen to protect the margins at the side of the track. And there in the very distance, I don't know if you can make it out, almost in the middle, there's a view of Cirencester Parish Church. So a very prominent landmark hereabouts. Further up the track, you come into some woodland, and over on the right at that point, there's something called Upperfield Barn. The horse ambulance. So anyway, they've got one ready for the polo events there. Back to the polo fields nearby, and I'm sure you will remember back in 2001 there was a bit of a drama in the newspapers when Prince Charles came off his horse in a polo match and had to be cared for at the Cirencester Cottage Hospital. So I managed to find that one on the internet. So now we're in the polo fields over near the north indicator there, and heading into Cirencester Park. That's the view, incidentally, looking back where we've come from towards the upper field barn. But that's the view across the fields. And that's the view looking south towards Cirencester Park. And as you can see, the views are pretty similar in both directions, vast open area. And that line you can see over on the right is the edge of the polo fields, presumably to stop the ball from running away too far. At the woodland you can see there, that's when you actually enter the Cirencester Park, and there are the opening hours, 8 till 5. Unfortunately, bikes aren't allowed in there, but there's plenty of open space, good for walking, and that's looking back down the road. There's the barn that you can see in the very distance, just to give you a feel for the lie of the land. The first time I was there, there's quite a lot of forestry work going on, and access was closed in certain areas, but you could sort of skirt around it. And then when I was back there a few weeks ago with Margaret, and we had the benefit of sitting on one of the trees that they'd brought down a few weeks earlier. And also, we were there during the pandemic, which we're right in the middle of at the moment, and the sign up there asking us to maintain social distancing, which isn't at all difficult in such a vast area. A view out across the fields towards a water tank, the odd private house lurking in the forest, and here's wild garlic, which smell absolutely overwhelming in places like this, and very beautiful to admire. There is another farm tucked away in the woodland there, but the route goes off to the right at this point. Just keep following the signs. That's a false turning. No need to go in that way, but there again, if you turn to the left, there's no access that way either, which makes it very straightforward. Then you can't go towards Upen Farm, so you go down straight ahead. Ignore that junction, and walking through lovely woodland like this, very peaceful. And after about 5 minutes, you can look through the trees and see this vast open space. And we entered through this rather strange and beautiful gateway. There's Rob standing in the middle of it. And then you're in something, I think it's called the Broad Ride, with horse chestnut trees on both sides. And there in the distance, you can probably see Cirencester Parish Church again. So I went off to one side for the moment and took a close-up of the horse chestnut trees, because they are so magnificent at this time of year, and just speaks so much of God the Creator and the genius that put together such beauty and functionality all in these wonderful trees. Further down, there's a folly built in 1736, imaginatively called the Hexagon. I didn't bother to go and check that out, but probably a nice place to sit and have an ice cream. And there's the odd display board in the park where you can mug up on the history of the place. It has had a very interesting history. It was a deer park hundreds of years ago, and then a military base more recently, and a hospital. And then in 1944, the Glenn Miller band came to perform in Cirencester Park in front of, I think it was July 1944, and there were 7,000 troops, a lot of them Americans, of course, who were stationed in small huts here in Cirencester Park. And obviously that's something that is in the memory of the residents of Cirencester, at least those who were around at the time. Getting closer gradually towards the town centre. I noticed as we got closer to the town that the Bathurst estate have been planting some more trees over on the left. Very good ethic there of caring for creation. And you can see a lovely sunny day, people out enjoying themselves, even daring to sit down. Obviously no policemen around to stop them enjoying themselves. And then coming into the town now, enter at this point with a wonderful wrought iron work above. And the medieval looking castle was actually built in 1857 as a military armoury. Cecily Street, a very characterful place, and then turn sharp left. We can't really fail to miss this, which is sitting there on the corner, and that takes you along Riverside Walk. This is the entrance or the exit to the Cirencester open air swimming pool. Can't say that I've ever been, but it has got a very interesting history, and I think has been serialised by Corinna in the Parish Link magazine over the last 2 or 3 months. So do go and have a look at that if you'd like to. A little canal flowing from Barton Mill, and again very interesting history here, going back to the 1560s, and again would have been important part of the life of Cirencester, feeding the town in that period. Footpath goes across the bridge past some new houses, and then enters some very nice pasture land with some horses that you can see there. There's one of the nice things about this walk are the interpretation boards along the way, where you can find out a little bit more about the history, and then looking across the mill race or the little canal to one of the houses. And then at this time of year, the vegetation's absolutely at its best. And then we come back towards the start point by that Texaco garage, and there you can see how the river churn has been diverted to form that canal. It's got a sort of a weir gate there. I was very pleased to be able to walk around that area and share some of the slides with you this morning.